أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. Dear mu'mineen and mu'minat, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your efforts and increase your rewards, especially as we gather as brothers and sisters in Iman, conducting congregational prayers. If nothing but that, it is worth it, and inshallah, getting the opportunity to recite and reflect on the ayat of the Holy Quran and have some Islamic dialogues which are very important for all of us. Learning and continuing to learn should be the attitude and the behavior of a believer, of a Muslim. As Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, he commands us. Utlubu is a command. In Arabic we have fa'al amr. Fa'al amr means it is a command to tell you to do something. And the Prophet ﷺ says, اطلب العلم من المهد إلى اللحد. Sisters, أخوات, إذا ممكن اطلب العلم من المهد إلى اللحد is a command from Rasulullah ﷺ telling us to seek knowledge continuously. Min al-mahd is a command for parents to teach their children, knowing that they can learn as early as the cradle. And today, child psychology and child developmental psychology, they have done a lot of studies to actually prove that children are absorbing and learning as early as the cradle. Some theories are there that children could learn some things from the time that they are in the womb, through hearing, could get familiar with some things through that. And this is why it is suggested that you play Quran or recite Quran as a mother is pregnant, she recites or people recite around her, and that does affect and influence the child in the womb. But beyond that, from birth ongoing. Unfortunately, many of us, we limit studies to institutions. If we're going to some classes, university, or I guess Hawzat, or any other course that we may be doing for some sort of a certificate, then we study. But if that is not the case, then we are not studying. And Rasulullah ﷺ tells us otherwise. He tells us, seek knowledge as long as you're living, until the grave. Ilallah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the opportunity to seek knowledge. And these gatherings are intended for that. In fact, the sector and the founders and organizers are always concerned about education and learning. Yes, it's important to socialize. Yes, it's important to get together. Yes, Islam emphasizes on gatherings and congregations. However, the very important aspect of these gatherings is learning. the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, when he told his companions to gather, he asked them about gathering and reciting a hadith, which is to seek knowledge, basically, learn. He says, أَتَجْلِسُونَ وَتُحَدِّثُونَ. Do you get together and recite hadith? Not just sit together. It's very important that we make sure every gathering that we sit in, we benefit at least with something. You know, you get together at home, you invite family members for dinner, some hadith, some riwayat, some educational, some beneficial story, narration, hadith, ayah from the Holy Quran, some perhaps even words of wisdom from any wise individual or personality, and most significantly the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt salawatullah wa salamu alayhim ajma'in. Inshallah, we will continue throughout the year getting together and learning and having these learning sessions more of a dialogue, so we can actually benefit more, learn from each other. It's not a monologue that I speak and you listen. No, actually, I want to hear your feedback. I want to hear your questions. I want to hear your comments. And even if mu'mineen and mu'minat want to take notes at times, we can have workshops and learn and take notes, which would also definitely be beneficial for all of us, inshallah. Tonight I will speak very brief, and I want to also encourage mu'mineen and mu'minat to ask questions if they have, or to also give their comments and feedback on the topic or on other topics. First in priority for the topic, and then if we have time on other topics. The topic I have in mind, which I had announced, is regarding the two concepts which are very, very much discouraged or disliked, detested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and described in ways that are very scary, in fact, in the Holy Quran. One of them is known as al-israf, and the other one is al-tabdhir. Two different things which are used together often, and so we want to learn the meanings of the two terms, the differences between those two terms, and also some practical examples and applications of the two terms or two concepts, israf and tabdhir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it comes to israf, He says, إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. He does not like the musrifin. And when it comes to the tabdhir, He says tabdhir is, the action of tabdhir is the basically brothers of Satan, or Satan's devils, the brothers of the devils. Okay? He says, إِنَّ الْمُبَذِّرِينَ كَانُوا إِخْوَانَ الشَّيَاطِينَ. Mubadhirin are brothers or equals or similar to devils. We seek refuge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what is israf and what is tabdhir? One, God says He does not like, or la yuhibbu, the people of that caliber and those characteristics. Imagine, and let's just reflect on this briefly. La yuhibbu, okay? God does not like or does not love those who are of this caliber. What does that mean? Okay, not to be loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does it mean? Let's get into it a little bit and understand it. If we, and oftentimes we use the concept of mothers or fathers and mothers or parents, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted them love similar to His love. He is the source of love, and He granted parents that love, and therefore they set a very good example of divine love, godly love, especially the mother, because she displays the kind of love that oftentimes shocks people, oftentimes mesmerizes people. It puzzles people. How could she have so much love? How could she sacrifice so much? How, literally she would make sure the children are warm and she has to be cold. Literally makes sure that they are fed and, full while she is hungry. She gives them literally from her heart. And she gives them the best that she has, the best years of her life, the best times and best years of her life. Sacrifices for those children. This is an example of divine love. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us. Imagine one gets to a point where the mother, not as a mistake that some parents make. In some cultures, as soon as a child makes a mistake, the parents say, "We don't love you anymore." Thank God in the English culture I don't hear it. I don't know, I'm not going to use the terms so that I'm not pointing the finger at anybody, but I am very familiar with other cultures and other languages where if a child does something wrong, the first thing that the parents, or one of the common things that parents say to the child is that, "I don't love you anymore." Or if you do this, "I won't love you anymore." Very, very wrong. Tonight is not a discussion on upbringing, children's development and upbringing. However, just a side note, don't you ever say that to your children. It is the wrong thing to say, especially to children. Okay, I'll be upset, I won't like this action, okay, but to say I won't love you anymore, I won't like you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's a group of people, He says to them, or He says regarding them that He won't love them. One of them is musrifin. It's almost like a mother getting to the point that says, "This child I don't love anymore." Not as a mother who is using that expression just to scare the child off. No, sincerely, genuinely says that. Can you imagine that? Now, it doesn't mean that God's love can ever finish or cease or stop. It means that caliber and that kind of people, while they're in that in that kind of lifestyle, God will not love them. They are out of the realm of divine love. إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. So this is one. The other one, he says, devil's brothers. Imagine, إِخْوَانَ الشَّيَاطِينَ, even worse. So back to the terms. Israf or saraf is excessive usage. Being excessive in general is israf. One of the meanings of musrifin in Quran or in the ayat israf is excessively sinful. For example, we have the ayah يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم. For my servants who did israf against themselves. What is this israf referring to? Excessively sin, and those sins are against us. We're not doing anything against God. We're not going to harm God. We're not going to be able to affect Him in any way. No way can we, any one of us or anything in the universe, affect God. He is completely unaffected. One of the meanings of Samad is that. Allah Samad. Completely unaffected by the universe, by anyone, by anything. Therefore, when we sin, we're harming ourselves. Ya ibadi alladhina asrafu. So israf is excessiveness, being, doing something excessive. You have a question? Israf is being excessive. In the ayah that often is the term refers to this ayah or refers to the concept introduced by this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to consume what He has provided for us in this world and not to do israf, not to be excessive. Therefore, oftentimes israf as a term in jurisprudence and fiqh is used regarding consumption of resources. Not to be excessive. It says, Kulu washrab, eat and drink. But don't overuse, don't be excessive in your usage and consumption. And then he says, Innahu la yuhibbul musrifin. He does not like those who are musrifin. This is the concept of israf. The other one is tabdhir. Tabdhir is a little different. Again, they're oftentimes used together, these terms. They bring them together. They say israf and tabdhir. But they are different. Tabdhir comes from actually the spreading of seeds. That's where the actual... However, it is referring to wastefulness, not overconsumption, not excessive consumption, rather wastefulness. Okay? And with examples, inshallah, we'll try and distinguish the two and identify them through their examples, inshallah, and practical implementation or practical examples that teach us how to prevent. Because we don't want to implement, rather we want to prevent both israf and tabdhir. So tabdhir, on the other hand, is when one misuses, abuses. Okay? Israf is excessive usage. Tabdhir is misuse and abuse. A little, again, different. Now, why is it that when it comes to the tabdhir, he says, Ikhwan al-shayateen? Perhaps this is basically something that we try and identify through or try and understand through the ayat. Shayateen, or shaitan, the head of shayateen, being Iblis, he was given so many things. He was given lengthy life. He was given wisdom. He was given extremely rare and great opportunities that led him to being in close proximity to God and amongst the angels. He got to the point where he was addressed with the angels. He literally was addressed with the angels. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ, when your Lord said to the angels that you need to prostrate towards Adam. They prostrated except Iblis. So he was with the angels, amongst the angels. He was not an angel, though some other groups of faith and schools suggest that he was an angel, or he's an angel, that he was an angel and eventually he rebelled. In Islam, we do not have a rebellious angel. We don't believe that that is possible in the first place. We have another being known as al-jinn, and jinn, like humans, they have, amongst them there are believers, good people, or good jinn if you want, and amongst them there are ones who are transgressors, sinners. okay, disobedient ones. Quran is very clear on that. There is Surah Al-Jinn for those who want to learn about the truth of jinn and more about them. Surah Al-Jinn is very clear on them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala there describes through the words of jinn that some of us are good and just and some of us are oppressive and sinful. So jinn are different to angels. They can be basically sinful and disobedient and so on. Iblis and shayateen are given, and they were given before insan. They existed before. They are given certain things that insan doesn't have. In fact, certain things that many don't have. The length of life is one of them. The knowledge and the ability to even see us as humans from angles and a position that we cannot see them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran that Iblis and his qabil, his tribe, his people, they see you from where you cannot see them. They see you. They whisper to us in a way that we think it's our own thoughts. So this is an extremely rare and great gift in a way, or power. But what did they do with it? Did they use it right? Most of them did not. Instead of whispering to us to do the good things, what are they whispering to us to do? They're often shayateen, devils, and so many of them are deployed by Iblis, by their headmaster, to deceive us, to whisper to us to do the wrong thing. And therefore this character, or this horrible character of misuse and abuse of divine gifts is an example of shayateen, the work of shaitan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted their head, Iblis, a position where he was literally addressed amongst the angels, with the angels. In the hadith we are told he was described as the peacock of the angels. Peacock being the most beautiful bird in the bird kingdom, and therefore, the very elaborate, that's very distinguished. He was distinguished and well known amongst the malaika. Who? Iblis. Why? For his ibadah, for his worship. So he was worshipping so much, and he was so close. So he had all that. And he abused his position. He abused and continues to abuse him and his army, their abilities to, instead of guiding or worshipping, to misguide, to deceive, and to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, anyone who is wasteful is described as the brother of shayateen. Ikhwan al-shayateen. Inna al-mubaddirina kanu ikhwan al-shayateen. They are the brothers of shayateen. We seek refuge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from such a state or a position. So examples of that. I've spoken. If you have any questions or clarification or comment, you can, and then we can go to the examples. Yes.
The same opportunity with the insan God, when the God said, when he offered the insan to have basically pick up the weight that he wants to actually, the insan to be Khalifa, is that also Shaitan has that freedom to do actually bad thing and good thing, or we are, do they go also, they have they die, or they still live it forever until?
No, they have longer life. How long we don't know, relative to our life. We don't know how long it is, but they have longer life. But everyone and everything dies. Okay, so but they live different lives, and we know that they live longer lives, but how long we don't know. And Iblis, their head, was given life, basically a very, very prolonged life that he is. We don't know exactly when until he asked to live until the day of judgment. And God said to him, I will allow you to live until a known day, إلى يوم الوقت المعلوم, the known time. God knows it. We don't know it, and it's not made clear to us. So in terms of life, they live longer life. In terms of their free will, yes, they do have a free will, like insan. In terms of khilafah and vicegerency and the representation of God, insan was chosen, or Adam was chosen. They were not given that chance. God chose when it came to that, and part of the reason Iblis became our great enemy is the fact that he was not chosen and it was Adam who was chosen. So,
but if you go back, I just want to go back to that ayah, just not to repeat the Bible. They're asking, God was saying, we asking all the mountains and everyone to pick up this list, and nobody picks it up except the Adam. Was so.
In that one, Malaika and the jinn are not mentioned. So it's not necessarily, and that amana is not necessarily the khilafah. It's something different. Okay. Amongst the creatures in this world that we know of, God says, إِنَّا عَرَضْنَا الْأَمَانَةَ عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ فَأَبَيْنَ أَنْ يَحْمِلْنَهَا وَأَشْفَقْنَ مِنْهَا وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانُ. This is a different concept. It's not necessarily them versus us. That ayah doesn't bring them up, so that's not necessarily them versus us. But what is there, which is them versus us, is the fact that khilafah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth was given to Adam and not to Iblis or any of the Malaika for that matter, and therefore Malaika were surprised and Iblis was angry or extremely disappointed, and therefore decided to disobey God and to make it his mission to make us lose, basically, to deceive us and make us lose.
But it's not what the Shaitan had accepted. It said that he was actually considered to take the Khilafah instead from the Adam. Then that's what he said, I was better than him, that I could take that Khilafah.
It doesn't mention that. أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِنْهُ, I want to prostrate for him because I'm better than him. That's what he said. It doesn't mention, so we don't necessarily know. That's, if we can stick to Israf and Tabdir, and then if we have time we can try and cover other issues, including jinn and shaitan and Iblis, inshallah. But let's, my focus was, or my hope was to try and tackle those two concepts, Israf and Tabdir first, and inshallah if we have time we can cover other concepts, inshallah. Very valuable questions, by the way. Yes, so if you have any questions or comments on Israf and Tabdir, otherwise I'll give some examples to make it a little more clear what each one of them is. So now just a quick example, and I would like to hear from some of you, or as many as we can, inshallah. When it comes to Israf, we said Israf is overusage, okay? Excessive usage, whereas Tabdir is wastefulness and abuse, okay? Wrong usage, if you want. When it comes to Israf, examples could be in terms of when it comes to basically consumption of goods, consumption of resources, using more than what one needs. And it's a little, and again, they're used together because they could be very closely related, or sometimes one leading to the other. And through the examples, we'll understand. When it comes again to israf, it is using more than one needs, consuming of God's gifts and resources that He has given us beyond one's needs. And it could be, israf could be different from time to time, society to society, and it could be different in terms of even the social classes or economical classes, if you want, though Islam does not have social classes, so to speak, but relative to everyone's economical state, sometimes israf or usage and overusage could be different. How so? So for example, let's use the focus a little bit on the term israf first. When it comes to having certain goods, certain things that we have, buying some garments, shoes, okay? One may need, a few changes of clothes. Okay? Relative to their time, relative to their economical situation or class, when it is considered excessive, that is israf. Now again, we have to be very careful with urf, because we have to stick to the urf of believers, not look at the urf of sinful people, urf of people who are completely excessive altogether. I'll give you an example. One builds a house. It is recommended to have, to make the house that you make for your family, التوسعة على العيال is recommended, to make things easy for your family. So in the hadith we are told, one of the things that bring happiness here in this world is من سعادة المرء وسعداء, to have a bigger house. Now what is a big house? That could be relative to one's economical state, as long as we don't go as far as the sinful, excessive people who become musrifin altogether, okay? Which God says, إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. So one thing we need to understand, the dar that is referred to here in the hadith is the area that people live in. And it used to be within the courtyard of a family. They have dur, okay, dar fulan. Each individual in the family has a dar. You could almost say like a room, or a room with its amenities, okay? So to have a bigger room, is a good thing, is a positive thing. And relative to one's, again, ability, one's environment, area, time, all of these things matter. What if somebody has a house that has so many rooms that they don't need? Say for instance, 3-4 people in the family. I remember one guy, he had, it was known in one of the towns that I visited, it was known that he had the house of 200 rooms. Literally, he had 200 rooms in his castle. They called it his house, but it was a huge castle. Every one of the bedrooms had its own amenities, and furnished with things from, they always spoke back then about Italian furniture, so brought his furniture from Italy and so on. What does he need it for? How many of them get used? The rest collect dust, but cleaners have to constantly maintain and clean. This is where it is definitely israf. Okay, in that kind of. One may need 1, 2, 3. In at the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam, his Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, his example he gave to in one of his sermons was, I have 2 changes, 2 garments. Okay, for food I have 2 pieces of bread, and for clothing I have 2 garments. Okay, so that was the pride of Imam Ali alayhi salam, that he doesn't have so many. So now for in our time, maybe it's different. Imams of Ahlul Bayt did mention that there are changes to those things in the circumstances. And therefore, we could say that it is different times, so maybe a few more changes are okay. But for example, now you have walk-in closets, and some of these walk-in closets are as big as bedrooms. Okay, an actual bedroom. Now, out of a sudden, the size of the walk-in closet is the bedroom, and it's full. And most of the things that are in it would hardly ever get used, if ever. Okay, this is where it becomes israf. I remember when we visited some of the castles of, one of the kings that was removed from power. One of the things that was said about them is that, and they showed us the closet and how many places for shoes the queen had. And that was condemned. As a child growing up, I looked at that and no, why would she need 50 pairs of shoes? Now you ask most of our people, they may have 50 or more even, I don't know. I go to people's houses, average people, and this is how they're living. Some of this becomes israf. Okay? Now what about tabdir? So as you see, israf here is, even if you are not wasting it, throwing it, ripping it, even if that's not the case, but you are over-consuming of it. Okay? That is israf. Tabdir is to waste it. For example, you have good clothes that anybody, you don't like anymore, for example, but somebody else could use. And you make it into a rag and start cleaning with it. Or throw it, or put it in the trash. Okay? A good pair of shoes that somebody else could benefit from, you throw it away in the trash, for example. This is tabdir. Food that could be eaten, this is what many of us are victims of. Many of us, when it comes to food, especially in this day and age in this society, we are doing tabdir. And tabdir is what we said, ikhwan al-shayateen wal-'iyadhu billah. During the month of Ramadan, one of our dear brothers is not here. He is here in the center. I don't know if he can hear me. Was often very, very annoyed. I would say maybe I was annoyed, but definitely not as annoyed as he was. Because this issue of wastefulness, he is extremely passionate about. And he would often show us literally food that has been barely touched, that could feed a family, thrown into the trash can. Literally, as it is. This is definitely tabdir. It is not just haram, okay? We need to understand this. Both of these are haram acts. Israf is haram. Tabdir is haram. It's not a joke. It's not, I'm not just saying, it's something bad we should not do. Okay? No, it is haram. It is a sin. It's funny how we are sometimes in terms of some haram things we're so concerned about, other haram things we're not so concerned about. We do them as if it's a normal thing, like backbiting, ghiba. You tell people backbiting is haram. You wouldn't put your hand and steal from someone, would you? That's haram, yeah? What about backbiting? Is it okay? Which one is worse? Can we even compare them? Yeah. Qiyas is not allowed in Islam. We're not allowed to compare. But if you want to really look deep into them, you could easily say backbiting has worse effects than actually, stealing from somebody. To that degree. Not just backbiting, sometimes fitna, where you're speaking behind someone and causing trouble between two people. Okay? That is fitna. Fitna is considered not us comparing it, Quran compares it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالْفِتْنَةُ أَشَدُّ مِنَ الْقَتْلِ is worse than killing. It's haram act, yeah? Now, how many people would take a knife and kill someone? Not many, inshallah. Or take a gun and shoot somebody? Not many. But how many people easily commit fitna? Say something knowing that it's going to create a problem between those two people. They know that it's going to create a problem, and they do it. Not only they're backbiting, not only they're doing the ghiba, but also saying something, oh, he said this about you. He did this towards you. Backbiting and doing fitna and basically mischief, creating trouble between two people. Worse than killing, people do it. Israf and tabdir is haram. It's simply haram. But unfortunately, many of us are victims of it, and we do it without even realizing. We end up wasting, and we end up overusing. So now, an example of kulu washrabu wa la tusrifu. God says, eat and drink, but don't over-consume. What is over-consume here? Not tabdir yet. What we often do is tabdir, we waste. Over-consume is literally to eat more than what you should eat. That itself is a problem. Sometimes people say you have to finish it. No, save it. Or give it away, give it to someone. Save it for later, another meal. And don't end up, and this is important for ladies, mothers, don't cook when you have leftovers. Make sure you use your leftovers. Because otherwise you will end up doing tabdir. Either you'll force the family to overeat, israf, or you will throw it away, tabdir. Now it's understandable sometimes some things go off, go bad. As long as we're not consciously or deliberately doing it and we are not negligent about it, then it's not a sin. It went bad, but one has to be make sure they're not negligent, they're not disregarding food and other blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An example of israf, and I'll use this last example, inshallah, if anyone has questions. An example of israf is as simple as leaving the tap of water open. You need to use water for wudu, for example. Okay, how much you need water for wudu? If I am not mistaken, in liter forms, I don't know ounces, but in liter, for ghusl, it would be 1.5 liters for ghusl, based on the hadith. And for wudu, it'll be, if I'm not mistaken, it will be, or maybe ghusl would be as 3 liters, and wudu 750 milliliters. That's what I have in mind from the calculations based on what the wudu is about 750 milliliters, 3/4 of a liter, and ghusl is either 1.5 or 3 liters. Most of us use multiples of that, multiples, and that itself could be israf. Yeah.
Today, basically, anybody wants to go to the shop, you have to negotiate
Yeah.
And you set it up in the efficiency you want it.
Yeah.
As soon as you get in, it's on until the time you finish. From
Yeah.
half an hour, it's still running.
Yeah.
Then you get out of the shop. That's a lot more to it. As you said, you're supposed to go in there and just put 1 liter out of the car yourself and make it close and clean up yourself.
Yeah.
And come out right there. And I don't know if that's going to work
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. I mean,
This continuous flow is what changed the equation. But many cities are suffering from a shortage of water as a result, because people's waste have really become excessive. The cost is little, so cities and governments have to implement certain laws in some cities to, in fact, reduce consumption, because they actually end up running out of water. The dams run down and so on. In Florida, perhaps this is not much of an issue. We have abundance of water. In some other states, maybe less of an issue. Canada doesn't have that issue. They have abundance of water. But other parts of the world, they have this issue. In general, in terms of ghusl, if one is not under the water and not washing themselves and the water is running, that's israf. You can't just have it run. Okay. If no one is washing themselves, okay, understood. But not under the water is just running on its own. That is israf. That is wasting water and energy, because you used electricity or gas to actually heat up that water, and now you're letting it go. So that itself is an issue. For wudu, if one turns on the thing and full blast, oftentimes, full blast, the water is running, and one is between washes, doesn't close it, after washes, doesn't close it, it starts from the beginning until the end, even brushing their teeth and the water is running. Okay, doing qalqala and the water is running. This is all israf. And one should be opening and closing as they consume.
I remember those old days, usually you go to the public, to the hammam, to take a shower.
Yeah.
Usually you go sit there and then the guy is coming and do soaping you and clean out you with all the soap and everything, and then get the
Bucket.
bucket of water and dump it on your head, wash all the
Yeah.
soap, and you're ready to go, basically, get the post, you want to go to the other place and get another
Bucket.
I guess you can put it in your head and the shoulders and you.
Yeah.
But now it's shower, it's pretty difficult to see.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see, because if we say swap around and prepare around, then as far as we get the go in the hammam, you turn the water and run it for an hour.
Yeah.
That's a lot of water.
Yeah.
That's
So
really basic.
the way I see it done is to make sure either you're using the water that's running. If you're not using it, then you turn it off. I hope that. Okay, so inshallah we'll conclude. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala